Sarah Palin was crucified for saying death panels. I'm saying that that is one gigantic death panel, and if it's not, it's the biggest HMO in world history, and everybody hates HMOs.
You look to Great Britain, and aren't they already purging people?
Oh, yes. Prostate cancer survival rates 608% higher in Great Britain than they are here in the United States. It is because they have been rationing care there for years. They do the same thing in Canada, which is why Canadians come over here. They meet with a man named Rick Baker. His office is on the border, and they need an MRI for a brain bleed. They can't get in for 3 months. They can get it here in a matter of days. So that's the biggest fear that I have with this legislation. The other is that we have now replaced MedPAC. What is MedPAC? MedPAC used to be the board that would make recommendations as to cutting Medicare. Those recommendations would have to be passed through Congress, and if those cuts to Medicare were too onerous, then Congress would stop those cuts. The Independent Payment Advisory Board, they call it independent because it is truly, for the first time in U.S. history, independent of Congress. It is being staffed later this year with 15 bureaucrats that will be appointed by Barack Obama, and these people are commissioned under this law to cut healthcare spending by $500 billion over the next 10 years. Here's the most frightening part. If those 15 bureaucrats cannot make those recommendations and make those cuts on a fair and equitable basis, the decisions to cut those Medicare benefits and healthcare benefits fall to one person. For the first time in U.S. history, they fall to one person to make those cuts. Do you know who that is? That is the acting director of the Health and Human Services Department, Kathleen Supercilious. So she gets to make those cuts.
We know that in England they purge the elderly. Naturally, they do that because they're not taxpayers anymore. What do they call them? Pensioners. So if anyone's going to be purged, I believe it will be the pensioners. If there's only so much money to go around, they're going to purge the people who don't contribute tax-wise. But how does that work in for the people who are young who don't pay in? Why do they protect these particular people?
They're the payers, you see. The young people will be paying for all of this. I already discussed with you community rating where they're going to be subsidizing everybody's health insurance premiums. That's already coming. But the young people, you see, are the workers. If you Google Complete Lives System by the brother of our tiny dancer mayor in Chicago, Rombo Deadfish Emanuel, his brother is Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel. Mm-hmm. And you see, he was President Obama's chief healthcare czar. And he had the president's gigantic ear throughout this entire legislation before it passed. And Dr. Emanuel believes in the complete life system. And in the Wall Street Journal, you will find a bar graph, of how he thinks healthcare should work. And like all good eugenics, he believes that at the age of 0, you should receive very little healthcare because you are fully dependent and you're not a good worker bee for the collective. But up the bar graph we go, up that bell curve, we find 35-year-olds who, according to Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel, should receive the most health care out of all citizens because they are good, healthy worker bees.
Now, what if you're not? But what if you're not a good, healthy worker bee at that age? There are plenty of people who don't pay federal taxes at that age. How do they fit? How do they fit in this eugenics plan?
Oh, see, I'm not talking about whether they pay income taxes or not. I'm talking about your value to society as a worker. So based on your value to society or the collective as a worker, you should be entitled, whether you pay or not, to health care, and the most health care of all other citizens at the age of 35.
So are these the artists, guitarists, songwriters that Nancy Pelosi is talking about?
These are everyone at the age of 35 because you are a strong, able-bodied person with a strong bat that can help the collective.
But that's a myth. That's a myth. There are people that of that age that aren't that. They're interested in sitting around in a drum circle. How is that beneficial to the government to keep those kind of people alive and viable?
You must not ask these questions. These questions are logical. Chairman Bao does not like logical questions.
And what about a person who's 75 years old that wants to work at Walmart and they're still working?
Oh, at age 75, I'll be surprised if they're still around because as we slide down that bar graph and that bell curve of Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel, when you get down to where I'm at 45, I'm rapidly losing value to Barack Obama. You get to around 60, 65, 70, and the amount of health care that you should receive is equal to how much you should have received at the age of 0, because you are now dependent again on the collective. You understand what I'm talking about? I'm talking about eugenics.
Right, and this is where I was heading with my line of questioning. You're a hostile witness. I have you on the stand now, and this is where I wanted to direct this to. Do you think there'll come a time when it'll be necessary to define yourself as a leftist in order to not be purged by the left? In other words, in other words, do you think that they're going to be looking at registration cards as a way of determining whether you're viable, if you're good for the system?
Of course. You have to understand that HIPAA privacy is gone now. HIPAA privacy no longer exists. All of your medical records, if you've been to the doctor lately, he has a little iPad-looking object. And as you're telling him things, he's no longer writing it into a paper file so that he can put it in a private file and protect it for you under federal HIPAA law. It's gone. Now, all that data is being collected. It will now be forwarded toward the IPAB, the Independent Payment Advisory Board, where, as Dr. Donald Berwick said, the former Obama appointee and CMS director, that all health care reform is by definition rationing of care. The question is, will we ration blindly? So they must ration care in order to make it efficient. You see, we must all be equal. We all must all be fair and equitable, which means that we will all suffer equally.
So what I'm getting from what you just said is that every doctor is going to be able to sit across the table from me, look at his iPad, and know that I once got a mayonnaise jar stuck in my ass by accident. I swear it was an accident.
You too?
Oh, see? I knew it happened to a lot more people than me. It's common.
Is it wrong? Yes, all that data has to be forwarded to IBEP so they can properly ration care.
And do you think they're going to sit there and know that I'm a conservative?
I don't think they have to. It's all going to be based on your age again, if they follow the complete life system. And understand that this is not hyperbole.
No. What if the rationing gets...
Software based on complete life system, software based on this system is being implemented in hospitals around this country. I have seen it myself.
I'm talking about when rationing gets to critical point where they're actually thinking about who stays and who goes, even at the age of 35.
Well, they won't have to make that decision. They won't have to make those decisions. You just simply will not have access to care, just as you do not in Canada, because the emergency rooms are run over, because they do not allow people to have care based on a private basis. They're just exploring that now. Although if you want an MRI and you have a hamster, it's next day service because they don't ration care for dogs and hamsters and cats.
Mm-hmm. What would you do about the free riders, as Romney puts it? How would you have addressed this?
Okay, first of all, that number is extremely overblown. Barack Obama would like to say it costs $1,000 for every person buying a health insurance policy. That is not the case. The actual amount is closer to $200, and the actual amount in our American healthcare system is less than 1% of uncompensated care. And that is not as much of a cost-shifting issue as it is an issue of lack of revenue to the federal treasury. You see, when someone goes to an emergency room, they don't have health insurance, that provider will be writing off those expenses, which means it's a lack of revenue to the federal treasury, because those hospitals and doctors and providers who treat people for free get to take that as a tax deduction. So how do we solve that? We started a program decades ago called Medicaid. It is now the largest line budget item on every state in this nation. It is a place for people who cannot get health care, who are truly indigent, to be able to get the health care that they need. The problem is that when you hand a Democrat a lump of money, they're going to spend it.
Well, we're about to wrap up, but I don't want to leave our viewers forming a noose, out in the potting shed. So how do we leave on a high note? What are our plans? Where do we go forward from here? How do we win this?
Okay, here's how you win it. There's a website called SenateConservatives.com. It is organized by Jim DeMint. in order to stop this legislation, our safety net that we used to be able to rely on, actually not since the 1930s, the U.S. Supreme Court has betrayed us. So that safety net is gone. So it is now up to the American people to elect enough U.S. senators so that we can get 51 votes, not a majority, not 60 votes, but just 51, and use the same reconciliation bill that they used to pass it, to repeal this law for good. We also need a president that is not Barack Obama. I would vote for an orange juice can, actually an empty one, over Barack Obama. Mitt Romney is not my first choice, but Mitt Romney is far better than a diabolical socialist.
Yeah, we've changed his name on Eye on the World to ACA Repealer. That's all we're calling him now. That's
I
it.
love that.
That's
I
all.
love that.
That's all he is to us, and he better
That's
not
it.
betray that if we do get him in. Yeah, I believe someone said that a clown car should drive up to the podium when Roberts is swearing him in and present him with a pen where he signs the repeal. I went one further. Then he should deck Roberts. You know, that was the part the person left out. He should just punch Roberts and floor him. Lights out. But anyway, all right. So
hey, Mitt raised $4.1 million on the day and the second day after this ruling came down. That wasn't by accident. America agrees with you and I. Mitt must be president. Period.
Yeah, I said that this is probably the best outcome. Other obviously, people say, well, what are you talking about? You didn't want it struck down completely. Obviously, but I'm saying that this was probably the best outcome for it to be couched as a tax, and I knew that it would invigorate the groundswell, and we did see it. What did you say? 4.1 million as we speak from that.
4.1 million as we speak. And any positive political ramifications that come from this are welcome, but we must always remember that these positive political ramifications are the result of a traitorous act.
Oh yeah, no, I absolutely agree. But the one ominous thing that Robert said, and I think he was speaking about himself, is that the Supreme Court can't save us from our own poor political choices, including Robert's. But
exactly.
So we have to get out there. We have to vote. We have to spread this information that you've just given our viewers and our listeners. Viewers. Why did I say viewers? Because I can see you. I can see you right now.
Drones.
Yeah, I have a
That's
drone.
a different subject.
Yes. So yeah, we'll get on that subject another time. But right now we're gonna wrap up and thank you for being on. And I hope you left everyone a little bit more knowledgeable and maybe a little bit more encouraged. So thank you very much.
That is my hope.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care.
Bye.